Good afternoon. I'm Lois Wolk, and with me is my co-author and colleague, joint author and colleague, Senator Monning. And we've just left the Senate, where a majority of our colleagues have agreed to move the End-of-Life Option Act further onto the Assembly, and that's where we're going next. It's another step in the process. We're very heartened by the comments that were made. There were some thoughtful concerns that were raised, and we'll certainly look at those. But behind us are a number of people who certainly will be available to answer questions, and for whom this has been the first part of a long and meaningful journey, but a difficult one. I'd like to introduce my colleague and joint author and good friend, Senator Monning. We are going to have to go back to finish the work of the Senate, but there will be an opportunity for questions with the folks behind us as well.
Thank you, Senator Wolk. Thank all of you for being here today and for your attention on this very important issue. As you know, we've just succeeded in moving SB 128 off the Senate floor, which gives us now the right and the ability to move to the state assembly. So we're not to the finish line yet, but we count today's vote and today's victory as a historic step forward. And it's a historic step forward made possible not so much by the work of Senator Wolk and myself as joint authors and our other co-authors, but really by the families who gather behind us and the hundreds of thousands they represent who have joined in this effort to establish not only this legal right, but what we consider to be a fundamental human right to a compassionate choice end-of-life option for people suffering from a terminal illness with less than 6 months to live. As Senator Wolk mentioned, we are going to have to return to the chamber. We can maybe take a couple of questions to us, and then we will introduce the family members who can stay and talk with you. I think, can you do the introductions in a minute? So any questions for Senator Wolk or myself? Well, we make a practice as seasoned legislators never to make such predictions. No predictions. That said, we are cautiously optimistic.
And we're going to work very, very hard. And we have allies in the Assembly, and we hope that in a month or so, maybe a little bit more, we'll be able to have the same kind of conversation and then send it to the governor. We're optimistic. Now we're going to the Assembly. Our first hearing will be at the Health Committee, and that will be in the next couple weeks. It will be before the recess.
Our understanding is it will go to the Health Committee, then to the Judiciary Committee. If successful in both those committees, it will go to Appropriations and then to the floor of the Assembly.
What was it like to hear such almost an emotional debate with your colleagues on this?
Well, it was a powerful conversation, and I think we hear a lot of different tough issues being debated, but I can't remember an issue that commanded greater attention and actually silence on the floor as people were speaking. It was a pretty powerful engagement, and I think marked by respect and civility, and yet I think the heaviness of the issue. That there's obviously different perspectives. Again, we see this as being a right to establish only for a terminally ill patient to exercise voluntarily. There's no mandate coming out of this vote. There's no requirement coming out of this vote. All this vote includes are protections to establish a human right for a voluntary patient.
This went on, the debate went on for, excuse me. Yeah, sure.
Sí, entonces con esta votación es un avance muy importante, es un gran honor ser un parte de este esfuerzo histórico y vamos a seguir con votaciones en la Asamblea donde queremos establecer este derecho, un derecho humano, a tener esta capacidad por las personas con una enfermedad terminal, obtener medicamentos que pueden ayudar en una transición compasiva. Gracias.
During the 2 hours of debate, we heard a great many personal stories, and that has been our experience since introducing this legislation and before, that everyone has a story, and they want to tell it. And we heard that on the floor today. And at the end of those conversations, whether privately or publicly, as you heard today, whether people support this law or not, they all agree there must be a better way. And we believe SB 128 offers that better way. So I think
I
going
think so.
Okay.
So we're going to excuse ourselves. Thank you for
Thank you
being
very
here.
much for coming.
And I'm going to introduce
Tony
Broaddus. My apologies. Tony's been an amazing organizer on this. Tony's going to introduce to you the family members who are here and will help guide your questions. Thank you again all for being here. Tony, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Hello, everyone. As Senator Monning said, my name is Tony Broaddus. I am the California Campaign Director for Compassion and Choices. We've been working for this day for a long time, and so I want to introduce you to the folks standing behind me, and then we'll have a couple of them come up and speak and then open up for your questions as well. So I'm going to do this from this direction, even though my little chart is from a different direction. So first, we have Elizabeth Wallner from Sacramento. She actually is part of litigation that's currently happening around this legislation, around this issue, and has been a spokesperson for medical aid in dying because she does have a terminal illness that she's been fighting for years. Next, we have, as you'll see, we have Debra Ziggler and Gary Holmes. Debra is Brittany Menard's mother and Gary her stepfather. You'll see they have a picture of Brittany with them today, and Brittany, of course, is one of the people who did so much to get this issue out there and before the legislature today. Next, we have George Amy, who's with another organization, Death with Dignity National Center, that Compassion and Choices is happy to work with. Next, we have Anita Freeman, who is also someone whose sister died last year and she was unable to help her sister pass peacefully at the end. She's spoken at length about her experience. And then next we have Dan Diaz, whom I know many of you recognize as the husband of Brittany Menard, and Dan has worked tirelessly on this issue and spent a lot more time at the Capitol than any of us, I think, talking to legislators about why this is so important. Next to him, we have Dr. Robert Alvera, also someone who has worked tirelessly on this issue after losing his daughter to cancer last year. Again, unable to help her at the end when she was in significant pain. And finally, last but certainly not least, we have the Reverend Sergio Camacho, who is a minister at the First United Methodist Church of Montclair, who has spoken out on this issue because he has counseled many, many families on this issue. So I think what we'll do is I am going to ask Dan Diaz to come up and say a few words, and I'll also have Debra Ziggler come up and say a few words, and then from there we'll just open it up to a few questions from all of you. Dan, can you just say how you feel today?
Hi, thank you. Very pleased, very happy to see the results of the Senate floor vote. I know that it's just one step in a long process, a significant step. I did prepare a brief statement, so I'll go ahead and share that. And that is that in deciding to move to Oregon so that Brittany could die peacefully, which is really the whole reason that she spoke up to begin with, there was many conversations that her and I had on this topic, and these are basically her words. So Brittany and I listened to, well, the narrative that the opposition presents, but unfortunately, in the end, their message was out of touch with with the reality of what Brittany was facing. Their message was based on fear, whereas Brittany's, the decisions that she was making was based off of the reality of what she was going through and the acknowledgement of what was coming for her, which daily was getting worse. So the position or the idea that she would have to stay in California and potentially suffer a horrific death was something that she was unwilling to accept, which was the reason that she said, I do have an option. And unfortunately, right now, that option means that we have to move to Oregon. But today, the Senate vote, I feel, is an affirmation of what Brittany started. And it reaffirms that she was simply doing what anybody in her predicament would do, which is to want to be in control of their own dying process. So with that, her and I both felt that an end-of-life options bill or law in California, it will not lead to more people dying. It will simply, it will lead to fewer people suffering. That was the importance and the reason that she spoke up. So with that, if there's any questions, or we go
Want to take a moment?
next? Okay.
Why don't you take a moment? Thank you, Dan. Debra, I also thought you might like to say a few words. I know it's a big day.
This is so low. You can.
I just wanted to say that Brittany is present here today. I can feel her presence swirling around, her energy, her love. She used the last portion of her life to fight for the rights of other terminally ill patients. These are people who have no hope, nowhere to go, no procedure, no surgery. This is the end. And it's a small universe, as Senator Monning said, but it's a painful universe. And Brittany wanted those that lived in that world to have the same options she had. She died peacefully. She died the way she planned. And being able to do that allowed her to live right up to the last minute. She loved this world. She loved nature. She loved traveling. And she decided she was going to live as long as she could. And then she would sneak away quietly. I am so proud of her, and I am so proud of California senators today, because they have heard Californians speak. 7 out of 10 of you say that you would want the same option were you in the same shoes. And your senators have listened to you. So keep talking, and maybe the House will listen too. Thank you.
I think what we'll do now is, I think you all have bios of most of the folks who are up here. So if you want to ask a few questions, we can do that for about 10 minutes, and then whoever is able and willing to stay around and do some one-on-ones, we can make that happen as well. Are there questions?
Are any of you concerned that the governor would veto this bill if it reaches his desk?
Of course, that's a concern. I believe that he is a kind and thoughtful man, and I think he will struggle with this. But I have faith that he will listen to the population of California. That's why I think it's so important for people to speak up, because I do believe that our leaders are swayed by the people that they represent, and we just need to speak up and let them know how we are feeling on this subject. I have great faith, and I do think it will be difficult for him. It was difficult for me.
Other questions? Okay, I think, as you know, we have several folks here with several different personal stories, perspectives, from personal to medical to religious perspectives, and I'm sure any of these folks would be happy to talk with you individually if you have additional questions. So thank you very much.